Yahweh reigneth, he is clothed with majesty.
Yahweh is clothed with strength. He girdeth himself.
The world also is established, that it cannot be moved.
Thy throne is established of old.
The floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their waves.
Yahweh on high is mightier
Than the noise of many waters, than the mighty waves of the sea. My testimony.
Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Wrong microphone. Oh, there we go. Wrong plug. So, continuing on Psalm 31. There we go. Okay. Yeah, let me not be ashamed of the Lord. I have called upon you. That's, you pray about things, and sometimes you fear that, hey, in spite of my prayers, God won't answer. And if God doesn't answer our prayer, that's sort of the ultimate shame. That that we have served God, right? At least, it's like David has a lot of, you're my God and I have my sin. And let me not be ashamed because I've called upon you. Let the wicked be ashamed. Let them be silent in the grave. And we did talk about that. It's like, just one more time in the Old Testament that, I'm supposed to write this stuff down. I want to collect stuff as I go through the Psalms, actually. And then I can write this down afterwards. Wrong thing. That's not what I want to do. Now I have my 31:17. 31. There we go. But really, we should stick with the, I shouldn't do that. I do that afterwards. Okay. Right, because it just says a little something about their attitude towards death. What did David think? And then we talked about it. There's a lot of ways you can interpret it. It doesn't have to mean, I'm not saying it proves anything. All I'm saying is it is suggestive. There are so many you get enough, they call it the preponderance of evidence. Sometimes there's not a real single conclusive piece of evidence that proves something. But sometimes it's just like that there's just so much other circumstantial evidence that a thing becomes like, well, I showed you 20 things. None of them proved my point, but they were all very suggestive. And as long as you also have looked at things that could be construed to be against your point, you may have done a good job, and that may be a legitimate, those 20 points may be fully legitimate. And you may be right. May be wrong, but, at some point, everything is you may be right, you may be wrong. And, it's like you get to a certain point of evidence, and it's like, how much more do you really need to make the leap of faith? Because it becomes like, because, obviously, no one likes to make this massive leap of faith. And sometimes you do, though. You put your faith in the Lord, and you don't have a lot of evidence for it necessarily. Maybe you're just in desperation, right? But on a lot of things, when it comes to doctrine and such, what happens is we have a motivation within ourselves to resist evidence. Meaning, like if someone comes to me with something contrary to my doctrine, it is human nature to be somewhat resistant to someone trying to tell me something different from what I think I know. Right? And I've tried to train myself to listen to people when they speak contrary, because they may say something I've never heard before. I remember that thing I did about Ravi Zacharias. I remember I said, I've heard all your arguments before. And I thought, that is a condescending thing to say. You know, it's a condescending thing to say to someone that I've heard. But and I understand it because I don't want to say that, but I know it. I mean, like, I've heard this before, and it becomes difficult to listen to that. But then again, every other time I listened to it, I wasn't really listening. I was just blocking it mentally, or as I was hearing it, I was looking for something like. What drives me nuts is when you're trying to make a point. Instead of addressing the point, they bring up some other, or like, let's say I have a scripture. It's like, I'm in Acts. I'm like, well, what does this mean? His soul was not left in hell, neither did his flesh see corruption. And David is with us to this day. His flesh did see corruption. It says things like that, and I want an explanation. And someone goes, well, what about the thief on the cross? It's like we were talking about something else. Aren't all the scriptures important? We can talk about the thief on the cross, but you asked me, like, well, why do you think that? And then I say, oh, here are my reasons. Then you go, well, what about this other reason for what I believe? It's like, aren't you going to help me with the thing I'm having trouble with? You know what I mean? I'm having this verse. This verse is in the way. But you want to talk about something else. There has to be, I always think there has to be like a better way to approach it to disarm people. Not so much that they will just agree with me, but so that they will actually just look at the scripture without the taint of feeling like they're being attacked. It's kind of off topic. But I guess when I read things like that, it's like I said, it's not a question of having proven something by this. It's one more suggestive thing. Yeah, sure, you can look at it from several perspectives. But it's good to look at it. How often does it talk like this, and in what context? Let the lying lips be put to silence, which speak grievous things proudly and contemptuously against the righteous. It's a good verse. Let the lying lips be put to silence. That's the judgment of God. Freedom of speech means that people can say anything. Sometimes they lie. But sometimes lies are not free. Like if you under oath lie, testify falsely, just some kind of speaking ought not be conducted. And but it's not a question of before the fact muzzling people or making the things they say. It's not because things are offensive. They speak grievous things and pride and contempt. They hold the righteous in contempt. They hate the righteous. People do. That's the whole thing with our culture. People hate righteousness and go about to establish a new righteousness. And then that's what their new religion is all about, is they're establishing a different kind of righteousness, a sort of racial virtue. It's one of the most cockamamie things I think I've ever encountered, as far as like providing any sound basis on which to, to visualize yourself in the world and to visualize right and wrong and good and bad, based on questions of how unequally you started out. And they're always obsessed with privileges and stuff. And the Bible talks about things. A guy has a son. A guy spent. Like I can tell you stories, and this is a thing that happens in the world, and people have talked about it on a number of occasions. Just because someone's born rich doesn't mean they stay rich. Maybe their father was a real go-getter but a terrible parent, and so his kids got raised in a way that they're not like him, or terrible, at least in the sense of like if he thought he was teaching them to be like him or to continue to build the family wealth, he might have another thing coming. Now, sometimes you see wealthy families like the president's family. It's like obviously they're very tight knit, and you got 3 generations there of people who have been mostly able to pass along their values as far as money grabbing and stuff, right? You have people who are, and to a greater and lesser degree, obviously. But then sometimes there's people that are born into privilege and they waste it all, and they make no good of it. They lose their, inherited wealth is not necessarily going to stick to somebody. It just gives them and people are always obsessed about privileges and stuff. It's like having a good parent that makes you privileged. It's like, yeah, but like, what, we all have to overcome the adversities of our life. Sometimes having quote unquote good parents, I've tried to be a good parent. I don't even know what that is exactly. You know what I mean? I try to be a good parent. I try to trust in the judgment of my children. Like I set out a long time ago thinking like they can judge me. But really I think about it right now, how can they judge me? I raised them. You know what I mean? Like I raised them, and what if their judgment is just based on my raising? So of course they approve of what I do because they've been raised to approve of it. I don't know. I really don't. But it's not so important. I want to do a good job. Everyone wants to be a good parent, or not everyone, but you know what I mean. Not metaphorically. I'm speaking in hyperbole. Everyone wants to be a good parent. Everyone who matters, obviously. People who don't, I'm not. You're not everyone. You're in another group. The wicked don't want to be good parents. They don't care. Obviously, but everyone wants to be a good parent. Most people who are relatively good, relative to their fellow men, to the worst of us, we do. But it's so hard to tell. Whether because you can err on the side of kindness or err on the side of being too strict. There's a lot of treacherous territory. You can mess things. I've certainly made mistakes. I could promise you that. But the world today has a lot of contempt for righteous things. You think about the contempt in which, certainly not everyone, but our popular culture has begun to, I think, veer so far away from the mainstream in their hatred for traditional values like the male and female relationship and the sacredness of that, the family structure and the sacredness of that. I don't know if that's exactly sacred, but it ought to be held sacred to some degree, obviously. We take oaths to God and before holy men in order to sanctify our marriages. If that were not so, then how would our children be sanctified? As Paul says, your faith sanctifies your children, even if you have an unbelieving spouse. So there's a sanctification of the family through the faith of either parent. And they hold these things in contempt. They really despise them. And why? We could venture many reasons why. Their training, their upbringing, their whatever. The fact that the culturally movies and stuff have been pushing harder and harder for immorality. Though the immorality of the movies goes back to the beginning of the movies. They're always a little sleazy. And it's in cultural things have always been, not always, but I just think back in the past 100 years, and go back to 1920 to 2020, the Roaring 20s. I don't know what these 20s are gonna be like. Started out interesting, huh? Oh, how great is thy goodness, which thou hast laid up for them that fear thee. which thou hast wrought for them that trust in thee before the sons of men. There is always this fear of God. And it's weird because we're told not to fear, right? So fear not, fear not, fear not, but fear God. And obviously, fear of God is about, I remember Arnold Murray used to say reverence, and he was my original teacher. Obviously, I don't, I don't endorse him in any way, shape, or form, because I mostly, most of my doings with him are on my website, where I have laid out why I don't agree with his doctrine or his methods, his general teaching methods. I dislike deeply, even maybe more so than the doctrinal errors. Like over time, because I realize the doctrinal errors are what make some of his disciples nasty. Some of his disciples are very nice. Some of them are very nice people. Very nice people. I should say so. I was one of them. I wasn't particularly nasty, but some people are. And the people I knew weren't. They weren't nasty. I had friends from Shepherd's Chapel. They were all nice people. I like every one of them. You know what I mean? I had my differences with some of them, but I liked them as people. And sometimes I'm very unlikable people, and I realized it had to do with his methods. It has to do with his methods. You flatter people constantly. You're pretty sharp, and it's like, because you agree with me, and then that doctrine becomes like the inflation for their ego. Like, if I were to build you up by saying that when I say weird stuff, if you can believe it, then you're special. And God has anointed you particularly because my weird ministry, you agree with it, or you can see it. Here's the thing: is like, if I brought you, the whole thing with the ink blots, right? The Rorschach test, where you take an ink blot, what do you see? Well, here's the thing: they say, what do you see? But it's just ink. It's like clouds. But the thing is, I could show you one and say, hey, do you see the butterfly? I go, yeah, I see the butterfly. I say, do you see the two old ladies with their heads back to back? Oh, I see that too. Meaning, when there are many interpretations possible for the scripture, most of them are wrong. In fact, all of them usually, except for one, maybe two, because sometimes scriptures have more than one interpretation, and both are true. Or all three, I don't know. But because there's ways you can look at it symbolically, you can look at it literally, and sometimes both things are true. But the fear of God, I don't know, I used to say reverence, right? And my point about that was that, can you see it? Like if I lay out here's the thing, like if anyone who disagrees with me is honest with themselves, like let's say I talk about hell and I talk about what I think about eternal destruction and stuff like that, and you don't agree with me, but you can at least see where I'm coming from with these scriptures. You should be able to, because I'm not a complete moron. Don't like to use language like that, but I'm referring it to myself. I'm not someone without any kind of understanding or, at all. Some people might say so. Maybe they say Paul is without understanding. But you can see it. Reverence, fear, respect. The fear I have towards God is as it pertains to the potential he has, because he is judge. And he's the judge. I gotta fear that, meaning understand that that's a real thing, that has consequences for me. And so I want to get right with the judge. I do, because he is the judge. He is the ultimate power behind the destruction of our souls. He's going to do it to us. The lake of fire belongs. For Tophet. Tophet is the Old Testament name for one of the Old Testament names for the place that Jesus referred to as Gehenna, which he likened to the lake of fire. And the prophets spoke of this place, which is the lake of fire. Isaiah, in a verse I like to quote all the time, Tophet is ordained of old, for the king it is prepared. He hath made it deep and large. The pile thereof is fire and much wood. The breath of the Lord of hosts, like a stream of brimstone doth kindle it. God's breath kindles the fires of hell that destroy, of Gehenna. I should make a distinction, because there's a distinction between what Jesus called Gehenna, hell, and what he would refer to as Hades, hell, because in Old Testament we also have a similar parallel where it does talk about this place of burning versus it talks about the standard things about when people die. Hell, the grave. And there's some confusion in that. Even our terminology is confused because it comes from paganism. Like hell, the Norse god of the underworld, you mean? Oh, no, you mean something else? Well, what do you mean? It's funny, I've had people say they don't like to use the word God. I wonder if they have a problem with the word hell also, because it's the name of a false god. You know, send them to hell. She'll deal with them. No, you know what I mean? I don't know if hell is male or female, but it just made sense. So, reverence God, fear him, because he is the judge. We don't fear men, though. And it comes to this thing where we fear men. Who do we fear more, God or men? Sometimes it's a lot easier to fear men because they're right there. And they can hurt you, too. They have power. But Jesus said, fear not them that can kill your body, but afterwards can do nothing more. I don't know, that's pretty, they killed my body. I'm usually trying to avoid that. It's hard not to fear them that can kill your body. I take it as aspirational. You know what I mean? I aspire to that I should not fear them that could kill me. That would be good. Because God is so much more to be feared. And his goodness is towards them that fear him. Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning of righteousness. To say like, hey, somebody is in charge of all this. And you know what? They're going to judge it all right. So I better be in tune with what's right. I better find out what's right, what's wrong. What you know what I mean? Like, what is the right thing? Because somebody's in charge. That's God. So when some man violates this thing, they think they're going to get away with it? No way. That's the thing. You hide the body, you think you got away with it, but God will get you. You fear not God. So many men fear not God. They don't consider, it's like, I can't kill and hide the body because I'm going to get caught because God will see it. David in his, like I said, this made me think of Absalom and David and Bathsheba and all that. And it probably refers to that. It sounds like it to me, right? When else would David have really been fleeing like this? I mean, he fled many times from Saul, but this feels different. Because he always had his band, he never really felt as alone as he did. He had people with him, but it was not like in the old days. And he's old. I mean, he's no spring chicken anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like he's a young man ready to, but his enemies, I still believe that they still feared David. I don't know if before the sons of men means this. Trust in you above the sons of men. Like, I don't trust in the sons of men. I trust in God. What I was originally going to say about this verse is sometimes, I get fearful of, I'll start having fears come on me. I don't necessarily, whatever. I'm not going to try to minimize it. I get fearful in whatever capacity you can imagine. Imagine me absolutely terrified. It doesn't matter. Because the reality is the reality, the Lord knows. But we all get afraid. We all get afraid at some time of things we shouldn't fear. We become afraid of things we should not be afraid of. And so when I am in the midst of that sometimes, when I remember to turn to the Lord in prayer, sometimes I'm resistant of it because I know the Lord is, it's not that, it's like, what it is? The part that I find sometimes I have trouble letting go of is like I'll consider the Lord, and I don't distrust He's going to carry me through it. But having been presented with fears, things that cause men to fear, or like, for me, it's not sometimes actually. When I think about it, I've seen my most recent troubles, and I thought, I don't know if it was fear that troubled me so much as that it was, what do I call it? I guess well, it is fear, but it's a particular kind. One thing that gets me, I don't know if this affects anybody else, but it really hurts me when I feel like I've brought trouble on myself. You know what I mean? I've done things I'm doing it where I feel like I'm the hand that is like I'm doing, like I've made a mistake. Something usually not a sinful mistake, just an innocent mistake. Like I wasn't on top of something. And it got past me. And now I feel like there's consequences coming. And I could say I do trust in the Lord. But I just mess things up. And I don't know why, when I mess things up so stupidly, I guess I feel at that moment I don't deserve for God to intervene on my behalf. When like, why would anyone intervene on behalf of someone so stupid? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And it's not like a thing where I'm tempting God. It's just I've just blown something, missed a deadline, missed it. You know what I mean? Something like that. Something very mundane. I said sinful in a way. Maybe I missed the mark, or but maybe I might have been distracted. Maybe something more important came up. It's not really sinful. There's no sinful reason why it happened. But my reaction could be characterized as sinful. In some way, I'm missing the mark. Because I feel very strongly at those times, I blame myself. And when I make mistakes, it makes me feel like I hate myself. Because I'm hurting myself. And at the time, I feel like, why would God protect me from that? I feel like the consequences are natural. It's one thing when I feel like the wicked are persecuting me. It's another thing when I'm falling into the pit I digged myself. And not to hurt anyone else or anything, but I'm just saying, like, I've been taken to my own devices. And most of them, and not in a very innocuous way. It's not like I was trying to do something wicked and I got taken in it. Or like I did, somehow, and that's possible, I suppose. I'm surely, that's usually the thing that I hope that would come upon the wicked. The scripture always says, not upon me. So they're not trying to create devices to wickedly lie in wait for the poor or to speak contemptuously of the righteous. I don't have contempt. I try not to have contempt for any man. You know what I mean? Jesus told us not to be contemptuous of other men. That's what the message in the Sermon on the Mount, when he talks about, you heard it was said, thou shalt not kill, but I say, don't be angry with your brother, don't say, thou fool, raka, etc. And those are all signals of contempt. And when you say, you're a moron, you're indicating your contempt for someone because they're not a moron. If they were, you wouldn't talk like that to them. You'd be like, oh, he's a moron. Like retarded. You'd be like, oh, he's retarded. We only insult normal people with those terms. Because, what are you, retarded? That's because we're not supposed to be. But it is contemptuous. And we ought never do that. Be careful with our words. We don't want to be contemptuous towards other human beings. As far as I'm concerned, anyone. Especially brothers, right? But, because here's the thing. If you can't speak to your own brother without being contemptuous, how are you gonna, how are you gonna deal with other men? It's just like if you can't love God, if you can't love your brother who you see, how can you love God who you don't see? If you can't be kind to your brother, how are you going to be kind to anybody? And you got people you got reason to be kind to. They're close to you. Some people's family life is miserable. They're nasty with their spouses. You got to be nice with your spouse. Speak gently to them. Kindly. And just tell women, entreat your husband. He married you because you're a female. Use a little of that charm. We like it. I don't like to be argued with, but I do like to be seduced. I mean, as far as I just mean in the sense of it would make me really happy. This is my wife. When she starts off like this, what would make me really happy? The next thing shouldn't be if you, by the way, that's not, if you, but it's a good start. Another one she gets me with is, please don't get angry. And she smiles and, please don't get angry. And usually it's something that's not that anger-inducing. That's why it's clever. I shouldn't talk about this, should I, Katie? I'm going to finish it just a little bit. Sometimes it's something that's not and that's great because then I'm like, okay, well, let me brace myself for something that's going to make me angry. And then she tells me, I'm like, oh, it's that. It's like, but it is something that maybe if I'm in the wrong mood, I might get angry. And she's conscious of my sin. So she tries not to make me angry. It's good. If you have an angry spouse, do your best to help them not be angry. Anyways, what I was talking about before is when I come this self-hating, I've done it myself, and what it is I experience an intense level of stress from that. I get a lot of mental anguish because I have a lot of experiences where I feel like I've shot myself in the foot, and it's really, it really bothers me on a deep personal level, like shooting yourself in the foot. I hate to have things go wrong so stupidly, and it's something that should have been in my control. You know what I mean? I let it happen. I hate that. I hate being the agent of my own demise, my own destruction, my own. You know what I mean? I really hate it. And you could say that in many ways, a lot of our sin is like that. I mean, we're doing it to ourselves, right? I don't know, but oftentimes when it's sin, it's funny. It's different. I don't know why. It shouldn't be different. When it's other things, though, I tend to just take the stress. And it's not that I necessarily have fear for the future, at least not at this point in my life. But just, I know there are different futures. And I feel like I've put myself in one. I would have liked the other future I had an option for, but I missed. You know what I mean? I missed the turnoff there. I wanted to get off and have the future where I didn't make that mistake. And since I made a mistake, I somehow feel like, why should I trust in the Lord for this? I've done it to myself. You know what I mean? It's one thing if the wicked were attacking me, well, then I'd expect God to come in and save me. But nobody's attacking me. I'm just, I don't know. I just blew something. Blew it. Maybe not even sin. I'm thinking about the things I'm thinking about in my personal life right now. It's not sin. I just through miscommunication and stuff. I guess I do get, when I feel like I'm being ground up in the gears of machinery that I can't get my hands on the levers of control. I mean, that's because I'm a bit of a controlling person. I mean, I try to control myself. My children are governed well. My wife is governed well. I try not to be a control freak, though, which is a danger. Right? As a leader, you don't want to put your hands too tightly on the reins of power. You can give them a little bit slack, If you've ever ridden horses, you know what I mean. It's better to ride it and get them to cooperate with you. You both want to run, Sometimes you got to rein things in. That's the way it goes. How great is thy goodness for those laid up for them to fear you. God is real good. I need to trust him even in situations where it doesn't seem like I deserve it. Because you know why? I never deserved it to begin with. I never deserved it to begin with. And trusting God, sometimes in those situations where you screw up and you have to live with the consequences. And the thing is, it turns out it's not about the honestly, I can live with consequences. You know what stresses me? It's the time between where I try to fix the mistake. It's stressful. Imagine if you sinned against your spouse or someone you love, and you had to confront that sin to them and and reconcile yourself. Think about the times when you have a disagreement with someone you care about, from when it happens to when it's resolved. The in-between time can be very stressful, and that's basically what I go through. But I really want to have God's peace even when I normally would be stressed. The peace of God passes understanding. Because there's so many things that I understand that just make my life miserable. You know what I mean? Because I understand the consequences of this. I understand that if I don't do that, then that. I understand that this can happen, that can happen, things break down, things happen. It's like all these things can happen to me. I don't want to look at this. It's on my left's computer. There's just like a mail delivery failure from the mail delivery system, and that was actually the cause of all my trouble. And I've seen several more here because there was a bunch of emails sent that didn't get through to important people, and that was frustrating. And then when they got unhappy with me, or when they were like, okay, don't take this guy seriously, trying to get them to take me seriously again, well, that was a chore, and that was stressful. It's like trying to make up with your spouse. You got to do it. You really need to do it. And it really needs to work. At least that's the way I've always taken it. Whenever my wife and I have a disagreement, we have to be reconciled as soon as possible. Preferably that day. And preferably immediately that day. I try to just drop everything. It's like, take care of this. Because peace between us is the most important thing. And I don't like to have lingering stuff. It eats me up. I get stressed with lingering stuff. It's funny because I think about it right now. Like I said, when it happened with this other thing, which is a financial matter, I was really stressed. Right? Until I fixed it. I've also used that stress in my relationship to when I've made a mistake and hurt my wife to try to make it up to her. I feel this agitation until the moment it's completed. So everything's fixed. I feel this intense, almost adrenalized response. Like I feel like jittery and, sometimes. I can get adrenalized. Depends on how severe things are. And this wasn't exactly adrenalized, this financial thing. But it was, I felt the stress. I did not have peace. I did not have peace, and I should have peace. God is with me. I shouldn't fear even my own errors. I trust the Lord, not myself. I'm a son of men. I know before the sons of men means like, here before the sons of men, I trust God. Let me let you guys know. Or, hey, I trust God a whole lot more than all of you. Either of those is good and true. Take either one. It's like I said, sometimes, do we have to have the right interpretation of this particular verse to be able to use both those truths? You know what I mean? This is what I mean. Like, can we recognize things that are true? Even if I don't have the true interpretation, I have the truth. That's important. That's why I said I can teach the Bible and be wrong and be right. Technically wrong. And technically it could be like, no, that before indicates, in their presence. In the presence of the sons of men, I trust God. Or it might mean, I trust in God more than, in front of, prior to the sons of men. It might clarify if I went into Bible Hub. I'm not going to do it. We're 40 minutes into the study. I want to keep going. I don't think we need to. because one of those is the proper interpretation, and it's fine. Either one is good. Let's do both. We're going to trust God when men see us, and we're going to trust God when men don't in our hearts, in that we trust God more than we trust men. He has wrought great goodness for us, and therefore we ought to be trusting. That, a lot of times the stresses of our lives, well, I just want to be able to deal with them. I have to deal with them. It's not like that's the thing. It's not like I wish I could just walk away sometimes. Oh well, blew it. Blew it. But what I would like to be like, oh wow, I hope I can get this fixed. Oh well. But the thing is, sometimes I feel like if I don't get emotionally involved, I won't be as attentive. And maybe that's how the screw up came in the first place. I wasn't really watching. I wasn't. I was attentive to it, but then Friday came and I didn't check email over the weekend. I do this a lot. I don't check email a lot. Like I shouldn't put up the Q&A title. People don't email me questions, but I hardly ever check that email. I gotta remind myself once in a while to check it. I do check it every couple of weeks, or every couple of weeks. I don't check it on a weekly basis even. It's probably been 2-3 weeks since I checked it now. I should check it. But doesn't always work that way. All right, let the lioness be put to silence. I like these verses. I don't know. They're just fun to talk about. Thou shalt hide them in the secret of thy presence from the pride of man. Thou shalt keep them secretly in a pavilion from the strife of tongues. Because when we talk about tongues there, he means the things they say. Lying lips put to silence. The lips don't lie. It's the heart, obviously. But, the lips are put for the things said. The tongue is put for the words that come off of the tongue. Interesting the way the words come off of the tongue. The tongue's an interesting member. It's the most clever muscle in your body. It can do, like you think about your fingers and stuff, the amazing little intricate details the tongue goes through, the tiny little motions to produce the sounds of language and stuff, and the way it flicks and moves. If you become conscious of it, it becomes a little bit, it's funny. And you realize what a marvelous little member it is, and also a destructive and evil one also, men and their lying lips and their filthy tongues. But anyways, those that trust the Lord, God hides in the secret of his presence from the pride of men. The secret of thy presence. Hide them from the pride of man in the secret of thy presence. The proud, they speak proudly against the righteous, contemptuously. Men, we know right. This is the new way of righteousness. It's wickedness. Evil is good. Good is evil. I'm still working on a video, and it's one of the things. There's going to be people holding up signs, and they'll be saying things like, "Good is evil. Evil is good." Okay, thou shalt hide them in the secret of thy presence from the pride of man. Man is full of pride. And the pride of man, well, I guess in this case, David's thinking of like the way they have come after him. They speak proudly and contemptuously against the righteous. They speak lies. So the secret of thy presence. God's presence is a secret. Isn't that an interesting thing? It's true. We all know this. Like God is present with me. That's a secret. It's a secret. You can't look at me and tell. I wish I could go through and just pick out all the spirit-filled believers. I know who I wanted to talk to. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe I should be talking to everybody else. I don't know. You know what I mean? Well, I know who the fellows were, right, for fellowship. You have to, of course you want to talk to the unbelievers, but also to the believers, of course. Believers and unbelievers. We want to be as ambassadors if we have the gifts. If we don't, some people have told me I'm not good at speaking. I wish I could. It's like, well then, find another part in the church, or continue to study. Maybe it will come. If you ever need to speak, really, if it's ever necessary in the plans of God, you gotta understand that He'll give you a mouth and wisdom, which your adversaries will not be able to gainsay. There's no need to bang your head against the wall and cast your pearls before swine from people who don't want to hear. You can always try it out and do it in your simple way. I've listened to 1,000 people who do not do 1,000. Well, I mean that also in a hyperbolic sense. I've listened to many, many people who do not have my intellectual capabilities or vocabulary or anything like that. They're not as well spoken. But I've listened to them talk about the gospel and their love of Jesus and find it very moving, because stated in its simplicity, everything doesn't have to be complicated. And if you say I overcomplicate things, you're probably right. It's an overly complicated study. It's fine. This is what I do. This is not meant for everybody. It's just what it is. God's presence is secret. His presence with me is a secret. And the pride of man says, I will have him. You know what I mean? But I am hidden from their pride. And I don't know what it means by that. I guess what it's saying, maybe there's a case where it's like, people are saying a lot of stuff. Let's say they're going to say, man, say, we're going to kill you. We're going to hang you out to dry. We're going to destroy you. Like, we have cancel culture today, right? Cancel culture. Met with someone, I said, what do you think of this cancel culture? Obviously, I think it's, wrong. I've been canceled for years, really. I mean, nobody listens to me anyways. I've been outside so many, I'm already such an outsider in everything from business to this, that it's like, what happens is when you start doing that, when they do what they do, things start crawling out from the margins, the marginal people, from people who have nothing to lose. I might have things to lose, but nothing. But they'd have to really work hard to take things from me, and they'd have to also endanger themselves. See, it's one thing when you can cancel someone from afar. You can just cancel them. Find out who their employer is. Call them. Get them fired. Or find out who their clients are. Destroy their business. These are things that people can do. But, they sit back and they think they're immune. It won't come to me. I can't be hurt by, we're going to hurt him. We're going to cancel them. It's easy when you have no consequences to face. But what if you had potential consequences? Are you still brave to cancel somebody? Are you brave enough to go to their home and kill them? Or try to intimidate them and risk getting killed yourself? I remember that. Someone told me, you should be careful. It's like because my information, people have, but your information, it's easy to find. It's like, yeah, it's not hard to find anybody's information. It's like, and because I'm a little more public, I don't want to challenge or dare anyone to show up in my property, but I promise them they shouldn't. To do harm or intimidate or whatever. It's like, that would be a big mistake. Mostly for them and anyone who thinks that that's a good idea should think twice. Would think twice. Oh, good is a goodness, which is laid up for them to fear thee. Not that anyone listening would be, but I'm just saying, but that's me defending myself. But God also, in his presence, I don't want to trust in that. But the thing is, here's what I do, and I've said this before. I trust the Lord. David trusted the Lord. He still carried a sword. I trust the Lord without qualification in all things. That he's taking care of me. That everything is going to work out great for me. Even if I get walked out my door tomorrow and a meteor fell from the sky and hit me right in the head, little one, put me down. Well, everything went great for me because that's how the Lord works. That's still great. It's not the way I wanted it to end, but, I had more work to do, but I fully trust the Lord because I've been trusting him the whole time. I'm trusting him now. Even in my distress, I'm trusting the Lord because I know I ought to be able to pull out of it with God's help. And the pride of the wicked, they think they can do things. I remember, here's the pride of the wicked. The pride of the wicked said this. This guy said, and he was a Christian, supposedly. Don't tell me you trust. Like he was a Shepherd's Chapel guy, basically threatening me. Not explicitly. You know what I mean? But he was saying stuff that sounded like a threat. He was saying like, boy, it'd sure be a terrible thing if something happened to your kids or your wife. That sounds like a veiled threat. Oh, I'm just saying it sure would be terrible. It's like, I'm like, if I showed this to detectives, what do you think they'd think about what you said? What do you think the police would think about such a statement? He stopped talking like that real fast, honestly. And I don't think he meant it. Well, no, actually, I do think he meant it. He meant it to intimidate me. And in the course of this conversation, he said, don't tell, it's like, don't tell me you're going to trust in God, because it's like, you're vulnerable. Everyone's vulnerable. Of course I'm vulnerable. I never said I'm invulnerable. But I trust in the Lord, and also, I do I do not tempt God either. You know what I mean? So my information is available, and you can say, well, aren't you tempting God maybe by not hiding? I am hiding. I am hiding in the secret of his presence. God is present here. You know what that means? Like if God that someone could come at me with armed men, and because God is present with me, if he doesn't want me to die, they will all die. Or whatever. Or they will be, or maybe the Lord will disarm them. Why do I have to always think so violently? You know what I mean? Why doesn't the fire that comes out of my mouth, it is words which convince them to lay down their arms? I don't know. I don't count on any particular thing, to tell you the truth, though. All I know is that I trust the Lord, and that that my suspicion is that any such thing would go really bad for anyone to try to do that to me, because I am hid in the presence of God. Like God is just standing there. Like when you come against me, you don't see it, but the Lord God is right there. He's very present in this situation. No, I don't think so. Not my servant. He certainly can, and I trust him to, if he has a will for me, nobody's going to get in the way of that. Make your plans. Make your plans. Try to do something, so foolish. I am kept secretly in a pavilion. Pavilion, open tent. This might just mean tent or fortress. Didn't we look up pavilion before? I know in English it means like a roof without walls, basically. Like a building with no walls. Like a glorified gazebo. I remember my friend was telling me about the gazebo he wants to build. I'm like, sounds more like a pavilion, because it was describing something. I'm like, that's a little more than a gazebo there. I know what the difference is. Is a gazebo always an octagon or round or something? I don't know. What an interesting word, too. Gazebo. Sounds, I don't know. Sounds like a cross between a gazelle and a hippo. A gazebo. I want to look at Pavilion real quick. Yeah, I'm going to do this so quickly, I'm not going to actually bring you to Bible Hub, which is where I am right now. I could actually kind of... No, that won't work. Well, actually, if I put this here, I can like do a quick one. That didn't work. It only shows the top there. I don't know why. Oh, well. Let's see. We're on verse... secret of thy presence and the pride of man, thou should keep them in a pavilion. Oh, wait. Alright, let me see the pavilion. You can't see what it says. It's kukla, a thicket or booth, as probably as covering or whatever. A booth, an open-sided thing, whatever. I'm not gonna. I don't think it's important enough to go in there. It means some sort of covering, a thicket. Now, when we talked about God hides himself in the thick darkness. I mean, people don't see God. You might as well be darkness. You have to penetrate the darkness to get to where God is. And you have to penetrate through God's pavilion about me to the secret, invisible pavilion in which I'm hiding all the time to get to me. You know, you can yak, talk. We're going to get him. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Oh, we're going to hurt him. You know, one, you got to be a little less lazy. You know, it's like, it takes some doing. It doesn't seem worth it. Certainly not. You know, I don't know. You know, since I posted those videos, and more are coming, the music videos I've done recently, I've noticed I've been getting more views on LinkedIn than normal. That's that LinkedIn is the social networking site for why is this like just totally out of why I have to am I in the wrong window? Oh, I am. That's funny. Okay, wait, that's the one. I had 2 Psalm windows up. That's why it wasn't working. Huh, because I could have done this. I'm sorry, I'm wasting time. And then, boom, there we go. Okay. Well, now I understand why it wasn't working. Well, I like that. The Secret Pavilion. There's a secret pavilion about me. You can't, you know, there's people all over the place. And you walk, you don't know. You don't realize. They are hidden in a secret pavilion, in the secret of his presence. His presence is there, but it's a secret. Nobody knows he's there. I mean, I know he's there, but the wicked can't see it. I like that. I'm kept up. I'm hidden. I'm in a secret place they don't know about. They don't know what God's they don't know what it's like to be in God's presence. To live in God's presence. They fear not God. To fear God is to know you are in the presence of God. The perfect fear of God is going to enable you to walk perfectly. You know, I mean, if you had perfect fear, which I don't. I wish I perfectly feared God. Then I could walk in perfection because I would, in everything, respect my judge and my Savior in understanding all that he has done for me on my behalf and all that I actually richly deserve from what I've done. Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, but I've also done things intentionally that were wrong. And God's forgiven me of that. And I won't fear him. You know? I came to him for forgiveness. You know what I mean? So many people come to forgiveness and they don't understand. It's like, yeah, I needed his forgiveness because he was going to destroy me. There's only 4 verses left and I got no time left. All right, we'll just pick up with verse 21. We didn't get many verses. That's all right. I'm enjoying myself studying. I wish, I don't know. I'm sorry if the digressions annoy anyone, but I don't know. Hopefully it gives you a perspective on these things that can enable you also. You know, it's like, I never know, you know, people, like, there's a thing like, people don't like to talk about themselves. You speak in generalities. I could place all the talk about myself into a generality. The Apostle Paul talked about himself. It's because it's like the most handy example I have. I can't get into your head. I can only get into my head. And so I can only confess my faults. I can only, recount my victories. I can recount other people's victories. But I can only really, when it comes to my mind, people can reveal me their minds. And when they do, I tell you. I always love the story about the pastor or the future pastor who said, it's all just religion. That was someone else's story, though. So I'll pick it up with verse 21 and hopefully get into Psalm 32 tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know why it's getting so slow right here, but I'm enjoying it. I got a little better sleep last night. I didn't get enough sleep, but I feel much more alert. I feel much better. Things are back on track for me. And so I'm hopeful that we can get on a regular 5-a-week study schedule again. And, that is the schedule. So I appreciate everyone who shows up, and I do not want to disappoint you in the quality of the study. So, tomorrow we will return, and we will continue in Psalm 31. Thanks for joining me, and we will see you tomorrow. At least metaphorically. Or idiomatically. See you tomorrow. All right. Music. Go.
Yahweh reigneth, he is clothed with majesty.
Yahweh's clothes he girdeth himself.
The world also is established, that it cannot be moved.
Thy throne is established of old.
The floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their waves.
Yahweh on high is mightier
Than the noise of many waters, than the mighty waves of the sea.